Hey guys, Freddy here. Welcome back to another retro adventure. The end of another week, and the end of another poll. We've got a very slim win for Scavenger Hunt. Now I'll cover that in the desktop in a wee second. But I'd like to bring attention to my patrons, who have all maxed out their strength attribute, and a more Herculean and titanic bunch you have never seen in your life. If you'd like to join them, and you'd like to gain access to these videos a week early, you'd like to become a real honest-to-goodness fake Laird of Scotland, you'd like to join our reading group, or many of the other offers that we have in our Patreon, then I've linked it down below. If you check it out, it'd be very much appreciated. But anyway, let's have a look at Scavenger Hunt. So, this is Scavenger Hunt. It's for the Star Wars role-playing game. It came out from West End Games in 1989. And like many of the adventures that West End Games created, it's trying to hook into the movies, using imagery from them. So like perhaps the most famous of the Star Wars adventures from this period, Tatooine Manhunt, uses the bounty hunters from Empire Strikes Back, but basically files the serial numbers off them and makes them a different bunch of bounty hunters who happen to look exactly the same. You know, Jodo Cast instead of Boba Fett, IG-72 instead of IG-88, etc. But this one hooks into A New Hope instead in its own particular way. And it's not as successful. I have to say, the way it uses the imagery is quite cool, but it's not done particularly well. Anyway, let's have a look at the back cover first of all. Scavenger Hunt by Brad Freeman. A funny thing happened on the way to an ambush, and now the largest pile of garbage in the galaxy stands between a rebel strike team and the fate of Secret Alliance sympathizers. The Imperials have destroyed the rebel base on Dankayo, reducing the facility to slag. Now that slag has been loaded into a transport for shipment to an Imperial research base. Buried within the wreckage are intact databanks containing locations of every rebel contact in this portion of the galaxy. If that information is discovered, thousands upon thousands of people will die. A rebel strike team has been assembled to intercept the Imperial transport. Problem number 1. Figure out the transport's destination so an ambush can be set up along the appropriate space lane. Problem number 2. Convince the scavenger Squibs to help with problem number 1. The Squibs know where the ship is headed, but only will reveal the information in exchange for a favour. A big favour. Now, got details, 40-page booklet features an exciting script with parts for every player that immediately thrusts their characters into the thick of the action. A full-colour poster-sized map of the Imperial Lambda-class shuttle. Detailed background information and statistics on 2 new alien species. Pull-out section including Games Master maps, non-player character templates, and all new ship statistics. Also includes Star Warriors Starfighter combat scenarios, setup rules, and full-colour counters. Extensive Game Master guidelines to help you create the fun and exciting mood of a Star Wars movie. Well, unfortunately, a bunch of that stuff's missing from my copy, because this is apparently second-hand. Even though I bought it from a game store and still got the price on the cover, it was sort of priced to clear. What became clear later is somebody has cleverly used this. You know, they've underlined sections, the colour map is gone, and the entire middle section of handouts is gone. We jump from page 18 to page 23, so those sections have gone. But the adventure itself is intact, so it can still be played. Now, inside, the artwork is West End Games' nice standard, and the adventure itself is very much as the back cover laid it out. So we've got an introduction, you know, the music begins before the curtain opens, a vibrating fanfare that swells to a crashing crescendo. In this adventure, details what happens, preparing to play, adventure materials, difficulty numbers and game balance, the background, recent events, the adventure synopsis, along with the main NPCs. And then we're straight into the adventure. So, as detailed on the back cover, the rebel base on Dankayo has been attacked and wiped out. The rebels themselves have managed to escape, but they've left behind the databanks with all this information in. So the rebels arrive, they get contacted by Imperial ships there, and can fool the Empire into thinking that they're Imperial agents as well. But before they can act, the Imperial ship jumps to hyperspace. Now, because a rebel base has been destroyed, there's lots of scrap there, lots of salvage. So Squibs have turned up and are salvaging the rebel base as well. and they know where the Imperial ship's gone. Now through this section we've got a battle going on between some Squibs and some Ugors who are salvaging the base. And you can make a deal with the Squibs, because the Squibs have the information you need. Now Squibs are deal makers. They're like the Ferengi in Star Trek. They will make a deal with anybody. Now it suggests in play here that the deal that the Squibs will make will be incredibly complex. You know, they will pass on favours they have from other people. You know, in exchange for this, we'll give you the information you want and a favour we're owed by a Mon Calamari trader, and we'll paint your ship and we'll polish it, but you need to give us this as well. And they'll make an incredibly complex deal, which will be difficult for the players to work out exactly who's coming out best off. But the basis of it is the Ugor have a certain amount of scrap that the Squibs want. And that's the main thing that the Squibs are going to ask the players to do. It's the scavenger hunt of the name, that they're going to go and raid this Ugor scrap depot. So they arrive in the scrap depot. It's a system filled with bits of scrap floating around. They'll have to navigate their way through it, maybe make deals with the Ugor to be able to access it, and then they will find an enormous piece of scrap, floating wreckage, which has the item that the Squib want, a gravity well generator. Now, the title, That's No Moon, gives you a hint what this piece of scrap is. It's a piece of wreckage from the first Death Star that you have to board. And that's where the adventure hooks into the movies, providing the players with places that they saw in the movies. There's the scrap compressor, the trash compactor, sorry, which has the large creature that's still in it. There's various other places, but the big surprise of the adventure, as they move through, you know, they find a bunch of droids who are still operating. Basically, they've been repairing themselves off pieces of scrap, so they are the void droids. They're various types, you know, interrogation droids, combat droids, general purpose droids, all built together from pieces of scrap to keep themselves functioning. They are zombie droids, essentially, it describes. But the big encounter in here, so there's the Dianoga in the trash compactor, and then there's Darth Vader's ghost. Basically, the players end up going into a room, and there's the meditation sphere that we see Darth Vader use in Empire Strikes Back, and I think Return of the Jedi as well, where Vader's spare helmet and cape are stored, so they will see this dark shape. And the adventure tries to get them to spend force points to go into action, to open fire, and panic, thinking that Darth Vader's there, and that their shots go through and do no effect. But it's just his helmet and his cape. But the nice thing in here is that there's various bits of Darth Vader's property left behind, because he, of course, left the Death Star on his TIE fighter and never returned, including the captured lightsaber of Obi-Wan Kenobi. It appears in whatever encounter happened first, so the void droids might have it as well. But it's a nice thing for the players to pick up, especially early on, before they have any lightsabers of their own, if they have any force sensitives who are going down a Jedi path. But we've got the bit where they get the gravity well projector, they have to escape from the Squib, they go back to the Squibs and make a deal. The Squibs want to make yet another deal, offering them things. Then perhaps give half interest in your ship to a Mon Calamari trader in exchange for a tugboat. We sell tugboat and lend you enough credits to buy back your ship. Good interest rate, keep gravity, doohickey for good, free paint job, no extra charge. You know, the Squibs like making their complex deals. It gives you suggestions on how to do those. It can be fun, or it can be very annoying. They do come across sometimes as a bit Jar Jar Binks, speaking funny. But for the Squibs, who are basically giant squirrel people, I've always kind of liked them. And then we've got the desperate showdown when they've been given the coordinates, they manage to ambush the Imperial transport, and we go into either RPG Starship Combat or Star Warriors Combat, which of course was the standalone space combat game that West End Games brought out. We've got the detail of the Lambda-class shuttle that the players are using, the armoured transport that the Empire is using, and they get to destroy it. hopefully, if they're successful, and avoid the data getting passed along. Now, as I said, while this adventure uses elements of the movies to try and hook you in, it's definitely not as successful as many of the other West End Games adventures. It's kind of disappointing in the way it's presented, especially in the big dramatic Darth Vader moment, where you're trying to force your players to act in a certain way, whereas many might not want to open fire. It's Darth Vader. They saw what happened to Han Solo. Han Solo has massive skills compared to most players, so they might just wait it out, and all they're going to see is a helmet and a cape sitting there. It's not going to move. It's not going to go for them. So this encounter can go very, very differently to how the adventure really expects it to go. Apart from that, there's some interesting ideas in here. The squib could possibly be swapped out with Toydarians or other races if you want to stick more to canon now, rather than staying with the West End Games species of Ugor and Squibs. And you could fit it into a more modern game. But this isn't one of the best West End Games adventures. It's kind of fun in places, but generally I wouldn't recommend it. So that was Scavenger Hunt. That won the poll this week with 30% of the vote. Only a single point and I think a single vote ahead of the second place, Harlequin's Back on 29%. Now, because most of the votes went between the two of those games, everything else lags behind. We've got joint 18% with Resection of Time for Call of Cthulhu, Cthulhu Now Adventure, and Airlords of the Ozarks for Twilight 2000. So I think they'll revisit the poll very soon. But lagging way behind with only 5% of the vote was the second Seal of Repulsion for Mutant Chronicles, which I have to admit I didn't think would be very successful. Mutant Chronicles hasn't featured very well in these polls, and an adventure as obscure as this I didn't think would have a lot of people voting for it. But anyway, kind of sad, because it'd be nice to see what kind of adventures they did for Mutant Chronicles. Anyway, as usual, they're all cleared out, and we're back over to a retro RPG poll. And this week we've got the Psionics Handbook for Dungeons & Dragons 3rd edition. Now this is a hardback version of the Psionics Handbook we already covered for 2nd edition. It's way better illustrated, it's full colour, it looks amazing, and it'd be great to cover it. Then we've got Realms of Sorcery for Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay from Hogshead in 2001. Now, one of the problems with Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay when it came out, that many people saw, was the magic system. Basically, it wasn't a lot more than the magic system from Warhammer Fantasy Battle, so not really suited to roleplay. And this book attempted to fix that. It had been promised for many decades, or many years by the time it came out. I think maybe even a decade or more. But when eventually Hogshead brought it out, they really fleshed out the magic system quite magnificently. Then we've got Cyber Technology for Shadowrun. This is a FASA book, obviously detailing cyber technology, but in a different way to the Street Samurai catalogues that we've covered in the past. This goes way more into the technology part of it and is for one of the later editions, so it'd be interesting to have a look through that. We've got The Point of No Return for the Babylon 5 role-playing game. Now this is one of their season books where it covers an entire year of the TV programme, so it'd be fascinating to look through that. And finally we've got Merchants of the Jump Web for Fading Suns. Now this is a game I've touched on in the past. I played it and it's a lot of fun, but these books aren't really that well known to me because they were gifted to me at some point. So I would like to have a look through them and see how this game fleshed itself out from the core rulebook, which itself was absolutely fantastic. So we'll see which one of those wins. And other things, well, the Discord channel, we've been chatting away a few things. I've asked a couple of questions. There's been ideas bouncing around as different people are working on different role-playing ideas. And that's been very, very interesting. People sharing their work, absolutely fascinating stuff. And over on the website, I've kind of finished my run of Dungeons & Dragons Scottish mythological creatures, but we're keeping up with the everyday updates I tend to do for Star Wars, and I'm fleshing out all the characters out of the Star Wars movie Rogue One, as well as doing my weekly reviews of The Bad Batch and The Mandalorian as they come out, and as the series of those end, I'll be statting those out in the future. But apart from that, there's not too much going on, so I think I've probably whittled on for quite long enough. So thank you very, very much for watching. But as always, most of all, you look after yourselves. And I'll catch you later. Bye now.